welcome in to Red Corner, Blue Corner right here on Stadium. Both of us are recovering from signing day. Very hectic for some teams. For others, they got their classes all locked up before it was lunchtime. But that is Jake Butt, two-time All-American Mackey Award winner, Michigan Wolverine, all-around great guy.
This is Joshua Perry, national champion, captain, all-state good hands for his community work. How about hectic? How about Ryan Day's reaction yesterday which it didn't stop there, but the weak knees. That was genuine.
It was.
It was genuine.
Yeah,
crazy
no,
day.
He needed that. All right, we gotta talk here a little bit before we get to talking. Scan that QR code, submit your content, follow us on IG, Red Corner _Blue Corner. But one of the guys everybody been talking about was Dylan Raiola making his selection for Nebraska, and then it didn't take very long for him to start getting a little name, image, and likeness deal. #1 quarterback gets a deal with Panini. Trading cards. How do you feel about that?
Good for him, man. Listen, this is what NIL was for, right? I mean, this is what NIL is for. Did you get any trading cards?
I did.
Coming out, I signed a couple of the trading cards as well. It is really cool.
Nice little paycheck, too.
Yeah, mine are high value now. I see a couple on eBay going for 99 cents.
Oh,
so
dude,
I'm sure his is up there a little bit.
Yeah.
So, hey, man, good for him, seriously. And strike while the iron's hot. I mean, his name has been leading almost a lot of the conversation in recruiting. So, yeah, good for him, man. Congratulations.
Real quick before we get to some of the winners, because it seems like this guy is a little bit of a winner here with the trading cards. If anybody upstairs can go on Google and find screenshots of what our cards are going for right now so we can put them in at the end of the show, that would be wonderful.
Please.
Yeah.
Please. You want to talk some winners? I mean, it was such in the new 4 teams just made it, I don't know, it was a fiery day. It was an exciting day. You get introduced, and some teams did better than others. So I'd just love to go through with some of our winners and losers of the day, and I'll let you have the floor to start it off. Who's your #1 winner of the day?
Yeah, #1, I would say Nebraska. And they finish, as it stands right now, they've got a top 6 class in the conference. It's the team that we have always talked about as a year 2 type of program under Matt Rule, what they could build with him. And the recruiting aspect had to come along. But I think the crown jewel, and I talked about why this is important earlier this week, but having Dylan Raiola on the roster now is important for them because they can continue to sell to other recruits now. You get to catch the ball from one of the best. You get to block for one of the best. Then when you get those receivers and the DBs get to practice against some of the best. And it continues to build. So for me, this is all heading in the right direction. I think that they have full alignment within that program through their athletic department as well. And so it's huge for them to get this type of class.
Alignment is such a phenomenal word. It really paints the picture. And it leads me to my biggest winner, which is Oregon. For a lot of the same reasons you said there, JP. Quarterback's the most important position. This isn't rocket science. Well, you got your quarterback today of Dylan Gabriel. You got your quarterback of tomorrow for Dante Moore. And then you look at the class and what unfolded. I mean, one of the better classes in college football, one of the better classes in the Big Ten Conference. And then you go ahead and flip. I mean, you talk about flipping. What you gain is someone else's loss. The Ducks flipped a pair of wide receiver commits from Ohio State and USC. 2 teams that traditionally, they know how to recruit and develop receivers. So Dan Lanning, he's got this thing headed in the right direction. You can feel the pressure building. Oregon's ready to explode.
Yeah, I've got Oregon as my #2 team, and I think they did a phenomenal job. I'm glad you mentioned the flips there, too, because I do think it's important. They not only did they flip and weaken somebody else's class, those are direct competitors, right? USC is a team that they've been competing against, but to do that to Ohio State, I think is putting a lot of people on notice about what they intend to do once they come into the Big Ten. And ultimately for Dan Lanning, I think that he has taken the more traditional approach that we've seen in the SEC in terms of program building. I'm going to get dudes, really talented dudes, and then I'm going to coach them as hard as I can. And ultimately, they're going to become great players. And although they fell short of maybe a college football playoff this year, wouldn't be shocking to see them making a run at a national title here in their window.
You got to knock on the door before you finally kick it down, right? And it seems like the moves he's making are going to get him to that next level. My second winner is a team that probably, they're not going to get a lot of headlines. They weren't the #1 class. But if you quietly look at what's going on in West Lafayette, the Purdue Boilermakers, in the second year of the Ryan Walters era, they're building some momentum. Look, it's the 8th ranked class in the Big Ten. But remember, it's not 10 teams in the Big Ten. It's 18 teams in the Big Ten. So that's top half of the Big Ten. You look at overall across all of college football, they're a top 3rd recruiting class. Hey, we talked about your win is someone else's loss. They take Reggie Love from Illinois just up the street. I wonder how Brett Bielema and Ryan Walters, what's their holiday dinner looking like these days? And then here's the thing. You know, Purdue sneakily has done a real good job with quarterbacks. Keep your eyes on Marcus Davila, the quarterback from Midland, Texas. Of course, you know, hey, Drew Brees, a Texas guy. Look, he's not Drew Brees, but Texas guy going to play for Purdue. When I started to watch his tape and look around the recruiting circles and scouts, they say this guy has a really impressive background. He looks mature in the quarterback position. I like Ryan Walters. When I talk to him, he's a guy I'd bet on.
Agreed.
And now you got the recruits and some of the transfer portals to back it up.
Agreed.
They're an interesting team going forward.
And I think quarterback is key for them because they're a team that wants to throw it around the yard. They want to do the air raid thing, and so solidifying that for the future was huge. And a couple of teams that solidified their quarterback situations for the future and why they're coming in at number 3 are both Indiana and Michigan State with new head coaches. And I think this was important for Indiana to bring in a 4-star in Tyler Cherry at quarterback. I think enough cannot be said about it because this is not a program who has necessarily been pumping out quarterbacks and had a ton of success with that. And now year 1 for Curt Cignetti coming in with a guy who he knows he can build with in the future is huge. And then for Jonathan Smith on the other side, right? I mean, we talked about what he did with Aiden Childs in the portal there, put together a solid class, brought in a couple more quarterbacks for depth purposes. I think he's trying to build this thing the right way too, where he understands you got to have a little bit of a stockpile built up. But those 2 programs, at least starting off saying, we're going to have the quarterback to go with the coach, I think is big.
Big Ten's making some big-time moves. So that leads me to my 3rd winner. You want to know who my 3rd winner is, JP?
Let's go.
You're the winner. I'm the winner.
Yeah.
You're the winner. We're all winners. The Big Ten fans are the winners. Of course, guys, you just logically, right? You're adding 4 big brands, Oregon, Washington, USC, UCLA. You start to look at this class, though, and the level of talent that's entering the Big Ten. The floor has been raised significantly. I think the ceiling has been raised as well. The level of competition and parity across the conference has probably never been better. And what makes a game, there were some awesome, fun games in the Big Ten this year, but what gets us all engaged, you know, we talk about college football being a regional sport. What gets us all engaged in sports beyond our alma mater, our childhood team, is games with big-time implications and with star power. You cannot deny the fact that Big Ten has made some moves to create significant implications, title implications, conference and national. And the amount of the quarterback play, which was an issue this year, should be much improved next year. I cannot wait to watch going forward, JP.
All right, well, let's talk a couple losers then, and they exist out on the West Coast, in my opinion. We'll talk about UCLA up first. I mean, you start to look at the Big Ten rankings, and no knock on Northwestern, but we typically find them toward the bottom of the recruiting rankings. You know who was 1 spot ahead? It's UCLA. That's really unfortunate. I know that they had, of course.
That is crazy.
Well, you know, they had the Chip Kelly may or may not be back thing going on. I think it's very difficult to recruit with that. I also don't know if Chip Kelly's the guy who wants to be out there on the road recruiting all the time. But here we are. As they enter the conference, they, from a talent standpoint, are going to be at a deficit. What does this mean for that program?
It's hard to say because what you made a good key point in there where Chip Kelly traditionally he's not invested heavily into recruiting everywhere he's been and in all situations, and yet he's won games. We have to say that the way we evaluate current college football teams has changed, right? You could use Deion Sanders as an example. They signed like 5 or 6 guys, right? How does that work? I don't know. To be seen. It's the same situation for UCLA. They're much better than Colorado, but they're relying on the transfer portal and alternate ways to get it done. I will say Rico Flores Jr., the transfer from Notre Dame.
Watched him a lot this year.
Huge get. Usually you get a guy that's a freshman that didn't play and doesn't see a future. He had a lot of great production.
He did.
He had over 100. He had a touchdown versus Ohio State, over 100 yards against Wake Forest. I think he's a nice get.
Yeah, he's coming from a wide receiver room, by the way, that I don't think was all that great, and he saw the writing on the wall. So hopefully he feels like he's got some confidence out there at UCLA.
I got another loser for you,
yeah.
And let's just keep it in state, right down the road. And I know you got some big-time opinions on this. So, you know, USC, you're not pulling the fire alarm. It's not panic time. Fifth-ranked recruiting class in the Big Ten. But, as we've seen with the Trojans, talent doesn't always necessarily translate to wins, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, we talked about some guys that flipped within conference. You lose your five-star quarterback, he transfers out. Let me just ask you, JP, what's really going on with the Trojans right now, and what's your opinion of Lincoln Riley as he enters the Big Ten Conference?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it's a top 5 class in the Big Ten, so it seems like things will be going well. But as you start to dig into this class, and similar to UCLA, they did not do a good job in the state of California of recruiting. And I think that's going to be a problem with them. And I understand that they're going to have a broader recruiting scope, especially as much as they're going to be traveling. But if you're USC, shouldn't you be getting the pick of the litter in California?
Yeah.
And they're not doing that right now. Then I look at how USC is built under Lincoln Riley. This does not feel like it's necessarily a developmental program.
Yeah.
I think this is a program that thrives off of having talent and being able to develop high-end talent, but not necessarily guys that you really got to work with. And so that's a problem. And then I've said this before, but I'm certainly in on this. Lincoln Riley, to me, is getting to that point where he really feels like an offensive coordinator masquerading as a head coach. Doesn't give a damn about defense, and they made a change on that side of the ball, bringing over UCLA's defensive coordinator, D'Anton Lynn. So hopefully that ends up being something that works out for them. But as I start to look at the way that this thing is built, man, I'm not exactly sure he's ready to stand up to the test of what Big Ten football really means.
Let me say this, because I think why this year was so disappointing, and why we'll see how this plays out. But in time, we're going to look at this year, because momentum is such a big thing in college football. When Lincoln Riley came to USC, that was the change of momentum. You got a guy that wins the Heisman this year, and it's like, okay, let's continue building us as the sexy place, high flying. We're going to win games. I thought they had a chance to compete for a playoff spot this year. Very, very far away of it. So that you lose significant momentum, which bleeds into recruiting, which makes future winning a little bit more difficult. I'm not selling all my Lincoln Riley stock. I'm not yet selling it. But I will say, you got to get this thing going. You got to get this thing going sooner, because you might not have Caleb Williams next year, who's a top 2 pick.
Yeah, I think I'm selling a little bit. I mean, you go 7-5 with the returning Heisman Trophy winner. The offense was one of the best in the country. Couldn't do a damn thing on defense. I'm not exactly sure that he has that mentality to flip it as they head into the Big Ten Conference.
We're going to get into this, and you guys please help us get into that as well. Get in the chat. Are you buying? Are you selling USC? Let us know. But, guys, it is time for our first break here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. And when we return, Michigan is embracing the role of the underdog in the playoff matchup against Alabama. And has the team learned from past failures? That's next when we return from Red Corner, Blue Corner.
you know, we feel like we're hungry. We feel like we're the underdog. This is the Alabama Invitational. Okay, they played in 8 out of the 10 playoffs. They've won a bunch of them. The SEC's won, I think, 4 or 5 in a row. So yeah, let's go. Let's bring on the best and let's play them and let's see where we're at.
That was Michigan defensive coordinator Jesse Minter talking about the matchup there with Alabama. And it seems Michigan is embracing this underdog role. They called this the Alabama Invitational. Now, I think this underdog thing is a strategy that's certainly been successful for the Wolverines. They've coined the Michigan versus everybody campaign. And even though they are 2-point favorites, I will say that it does feel like they are underdogs in this one. Would you say that is because of the lack of success that they have had, maybe the prominence that Alabama's program has had, or would you actually believe them to be underdogs?
Yeah, I think it's to me, it is the lack of bowl success. It's the fact Jim Harbaugh has not won a playoff game, and it's the fact we've seen with our own 2 eyes time and time again, Nick Saban coaches best games at the biggest moment and win playoff games and national titles. And I do think it's one of those things, hey, we got to see it to believe it. Most of the public is betting, even though Michigan is like favored per the line, most of the public is betting on Alabama. And we talk about this all the time, JP. I use the example of Tom Brady, who's the unchallenged greatest quarterback of all time, and yet he still says, I was a 6th round pick, right? Whether it's true or not, or regardless of what anybody says on the outside, this is exactly what Michigan should do, is embrace the underdog role. And I will say this in closing. Georgia, like as you're kind of tuning the radio, trying to get to the right station, Georgia, they were the underdog, but the lights were bright. Like it was too much. Right. TCU, it was almost a little cocky last year. It shocked me the way they talked about it. I feel that was humbling, and they're drawing on that experience this year. They're saying the right things, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up kind of the way that the last 2 years went, because I certainly do agree. Like, I don't hold 21 against Michigan at all, because they deserve to be there, but they were early compared to some of the contenders. Last year, they completely just tricked it off, and that's not something that they can do this year. But I do think that there is a balance, though, between being an underdog in a game like this and embracing the underdog role, and also just flat out saying, nobody in here say the word underdog. Like, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I might walk into that locker room and be like, damn all that underdog stuff. Nobody in here gets to say the word underdog. We're not underdogs anymore. We are the #1 team in the nation, and we are #1 for a reason. All of this, hey, let's lean into it. They don't believe in us. No. I don't need that to motivate my team anymore. We are the #1 team in the country, and so we're going to go out there and play like it, point blank, period.
You just got me fired up a little bit. You just got me fired up. And you've talked to us about Urban's approach when it comes to these playoff games, the mental aspect, the mental tuning of getting yourself ready. I think you're spot on. Is eventually you have to say, guys, we're the #1 team. We've sat here and said they look like the #1 team in college football all year. You've earned the right to do it. A big piece of this, though, JP, is you have a month off, and how do you structure that? And it seems like Michigan has hinted at changing in their practice routines ahead of this game. Jim Harbaugh seems like he's taken a page out of Nick Saban's book, who admitted earlier this month that in previous years his teams probably practiced too much. I was on one of those teams back in 2016.
What'd you guys call it?
We called it Christmas Camp.
And how'd that go?
We lost.
Okay.
We lost. Yeah,
there
was a beach day Florida State went to, we didn't go to. There was a Heat game they went to, we didn't get to go to.
Sun up, sundown, y'all were working.
Sun up to sundown. And here's the thing, too, because back then we had 11 guys get drafted that year, 17 make NFL rosters. We were a veteran team. You have to know your team. This team's this year is the same way. And J.J. McCarthy's an example of that. He had an interesting quote. He said, the last couple of years, I felt like we fell victim to paralysis by overanalysis. Getting over-detailed with too many things and overthinking things. JP, is there truth to this? Can a team overanalyze things? And, where are you at with Michigan tweaking their bowl prep lead-up?
Yeah, I think you can overanalyze things. You get to a point where you start looking at too many things. You start trying to guess what a team is going to do. And that's not a great place to be as a player. I think that there is an optimal level of preparation to where you can play freely without thinking. Right? But then when you get to doing the too much thinking, as you know, things don't necessarily go your way. I'm glad to hear this. I've had discussions that we haven't had on television, but with people around here about how I felt like there had to be a flaw in the postseason preparation for the University of Michigan because their record is so bad in the postseason. And I come from a program at Ohio State where the one thing that I thought that Urban did really well for us was he got us ready for bowl games. Now, we lost our bowl game in 2013, and part of the reason was we just didn't want to be there. We thought we should have been in a national title game, and so we just screwed around for a week. 2014 was one of the best coaching jobs he did, leading into the bowl game of the mental aspect with the physical aspect. In 2015, very similar thing with the physical aspect. And so I think that there has to be somebody there who can evaluate what went well and the things that didn't go well, we got to change.
So you bring up some real points. I'll just make this quick comment because, you know, you want to win so bad. Like your desire to win is so bad. And you just think, you know, Coach Harbaugh once told us less is more is a lie. Only more is more. So for us in 2016, and it applies to this team as too, we had to win this bowl game so bad that we worked so hard that we ended up being exhausted for the game. But there's these subtle, like subconscious communications when you're grinding your team that hard during bowl prep. You're almost telling the players, we don't think you're good enough to just do it. You're saying, hey, you need to do more because right now it isn't good enough. You see what I'm saying? You got to kind of play that game a little bit. Eventually say, guys, you've earned the right, just like you said, to play and feel and enter this game mentally like you're the best team in this matchup.
Yeah, there were points where we would go out to practice and we wouldn't even be worried about game plan. We would just be like practicing fundamentals, right? And like that's part of the process of what you give and what you don't. But we got to talk about a couple of bowl games that are coming up here, get some final predictions. We got Northwestern. They're playing Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl on Saturday. And wouldn't it be a nice little storybook ending for Northwestern if they were able to pull off the victory there?
Would be. It won't be easy. I like Kyle Whittingham as a coach. Utah's always a damn tough team. But as we've talked about in some of these matchups, like the level of importance matters. Like who is playing for Utah? It's something we got to, you know, who's in, who's out, and how does that change the matchups? You know, Northwestern, they're going to be at full speed ahead. So I think they can get it done. You know, this if David Braun can do this, talk about putting a bow on the season. Utah's consistently one of the better teams in the Pac-12. This will be no easy task.
Yeah, I think Braun's got the right type of team, though, because both of these teams thrive off of being, like, tough and gritty, right? Like, they thrive off of just grinding more than other teams. So I think that's going to be the fun of this matchup. And then we got to get to Minnesota. They go bowling against Bowling Green on Tuesday in the Quick Lane Bowl. Ethan Kaliakmanis, he ain't there. Yeah. Cole Kramer's going to be playing quarterback. What do you think about this one?
I know that you lead with the quarterback, but let me present you this. I don't think that matters all too much. Like if we saw Kaliakmanis this year, like, you know, at times he made some really nice throws. I'll give him credit. He did some nice things, but he was also pedestrian for a good part of the season. You know the thing I'm most concerned? Joe Rossi. Joe Rossi's in East Lansing for the Michigan State Spartans. Minnesota wins games by playing quality defense, so that's key to me, JP.
Yeah, I think you just got to not turn the football over if you're Minnesota, but I don't know how much I trust them to do that. I actually got Bowling Green winning this football game.
Green's a good football team.
We want to talk about these trading cards. We told you we would bring them up, and now we're going to pay off on this one. Do we have them ready to show the people here? All right, Jake first. Here we go.
See what we got.
Ah, man.
I undersold myself.
49 cents, but look at yours is near mint condition or better. How about that?
I had to work on my signature. Maybe that's why. That's a pretty poor signature right there.
Why aren't you wearing pads in yours?
This is because this was like one of my, I was consistently tearing my ACL and my knees were exploding. So that was somewhere in there. What do you got, JP? We got your trading card somewhere?
$3.99 for a used card.
You look lean.
And you can get that from Old Grunt's Basement.
What'd you weigh here?
Nasty. 255. I was carrying it well.
You were 255 in that?
Yeah, dude. I have way more than 255 now, and I don't.
Would you say you ran in the 40?
4.6.
Tell you what. We're doing work on the basketball court. Remember what they were telling us? We got some athletes on this side.
That's what I'm trying to tell them.
We got some athletes on this side.
They just don't come out here and just hoop on us like we weren't premium athletes. That's crazy. But that'll do it for us right here. On Red Corner, Blue Corner for Jake Butt, I'm Joshua Perry, and we'll see y'all next week. Happy holidays.